Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. So this morning, I'm going to take a look at an introduction to Xenon Connect. And so it's using cloud technology to reach an accurate trial balance faster. So my name is Gareth Salomon. I'm a chartered accountant that's heavily involved in the bookkeeping, both preparing the bookkeeping and reviewing the bookkeeping, and have been for years. I have my own small practice in the UK in North Wales. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the reason why we've created Xenon Connect and how it can hopefully help you in your own practice. First of all, the webinar overview. So what does Xenon Connect do? We'll look at knowledge and systems, and we'll look at the Xenon Connect process. Also, the main section will be a walkthrough of Xenon Connect itself. We'll look at what the benefits are, what we feel the benefits are for practices using Xenon Connect. We'll look at pricing for accountants and bookkeeping in practice, and we'll look at our no risk offer to get you started with Xenon Connect as well. So first of all, what does Xenon Connect do? Well, Xenon Connect is a cloud-based Xero add-on which saves accountants and bookkeepers time by automatically detecting errors and issues in bookkeeping data and generating a prioritized checklist to address them quickly, systematically, and consistently. So it mentions that we're a Xero add-on. We'll soon be adding QuickBooks by the end of this year as well, so this month, and then we'll be adding Sage and Free Agent next year as well, but currently it's just Xero. So the Xenon Connect process, essentially, this is broken down into 6 steps. So first of all, you would connect your Xero organization or multiple organizations. Xenon Connect then would pull in all the Xero data, all the bookkeeping data, and it would analyze it. It would then automatically produce an error or issue checklist, which we'll look at shortly. It will allow you to then review and fix those issues found and push the changes back into Xero directly from Xenon Connect, which will hopefully result in more reliable bookkeeping data. And we will then provide you with financial insights on the actual organization itself once that data has been cleansed. So the way I like to think about it is this. I recently did a quick pitch at the Bookkeepers Summit down in London, and I was trying to explain in 1 minute what Xenon Connect does. So I gave the analogy of being able to drive. So if you can drive, presumably you've passed your driving test. For example, myself, I've had thousands of hours driving experience. I know the general direction I want to go if I'm going somewhere. I know approximately how much fuel it should take and the cost of that fuel. I know how long the drive should take to get there. However, there are lots of unexpected things that could slow me down. So things like roadworks, other slow drivers on the road, diversions, perhaps my own tiredness, weather conditions. So I use a sat nav. I wouldn't think of going somewhere without a sat nav now. It's just there, and I just always use it. So the analogy really comparing to Xenon Connect is that we're all bookkeepers, potentially, or accountants. We've presumably passed or are going towards completing our bookkeeping tests. So we just passed our exams, we're qualified, we've potentially got years and years of experience. We know what good bookkeeping looks like. We know how to do it, but there are so many things that can get in our way and slow us down doing that bookkeeping or perhaps reviewing the bookkeeping. And if you look at the slide, there's lots of things here which we check for within Xenon Connect, which can otherwise slow you down from that process of getting the bookkeeping done. So we're looking at things like outstanding old items, so unreconciled bank items, old unpaid invoices, unpaid bills, unapproved invoices and bills, duplicate items, things like duplicate invoices, bills, whether something's been recorded as a spend item rather than a bill payment, that sort of thing, duplicate contacts, incorrectly coded items, so low-cost assets that perhaps would be better written off to the profit and loss account, capital item review, so reviewing those P&L nominals, which may be better capitalized as a fixed asset, multi-account suppliers and multi-tax suppliers, and we'll come on to those later, as well as unexpected account used and unexpected tax code used. And then we've got these utility checks. So they help you to do the bookkeeping faster. So things like setting contact defaults within Xero, or getting rid of clutter in your contact list, or getting rid of old contacts that you probably won't ever use again. So that's why we deem this a sat nav for bookkeepers, because although we know, as I say, we know what good bookkeeping looks like and how to do it, these things can get in our way of getting that bookkeeping done quickly. So we'll jump straight into Xenon Connect. And what you can see in front of you here is the partner dashboard. So if you were to sign up today, and we'll come on to the offer later, then you would be able to add one client completely for free. And you will see when you add that client, it will show up on this dashboard here. There's client panorama, and it allows you to see any clients that you've added, any Xero clients here, what's going on with those clients. So what's the bookkeeping health score, which we'll come on to shortly. Look at how many issues Xenon Connect has found and the value of those issues. We'll look at when the most recent transaction was in Xero to see how up to date the information is, and when that last bank item was physically reconciled as well. And it gives you a brief overview of how many bank items need reconciling here as well, or explaining. Now you can select the different periods. So you can select, for example, just the previous month and it would change instantly, but we'll leave it all transactions for now. Also on this partner dashboard, you'll see there's an activity tab, for example, where you can see how many transactions you've taken care of for that each particular individual client. So it gives you the turnover figure for that period that you selected there. It gives you the total number of transactions, and it breaks down that total number of transactions by the type of transaction. So invoice, bill, credit note, bank or journals. Also, you can filter by transaction date, so the actual accounting date of those transactions, or when they were physically posted onto Xero. You can do that instantly by changing this filter here. So if you are doing transaction-based billing and you're looking at an easy way of getting that data from Xero to work out how much work you've done for a client in the last period, then you can, that information's here at the tip of your fingertips for all of your clients. So it's really easy. You can export that as a CSV file as well. You can add team members into Xenon Connect, and you can set different access rights for each of those team members, whether that be feature access rights or whether it be specific clients that you only want them to have access to, or all clients. But jumping straight into one of these imaginary clients, so if you go back to the client panorama, you can see this Dragon Retail at the bottom here, and we'll click on this now, and it takes you straight to the main brain of the system for this particular client, which is the bookkeeping health check overview. And we wanted to keep this as simple as possible, but as clear and powerful as possible too. So this checklist, as soon as you connect your client in Xero, it takes a few minutes initially to download all the data, and it then resyncs every night after that, but you can do manual syncs as well if you've made a lot of changes during the day. This produces a checklist of all the issues that we look for so far in Xenon Connect, and we are adding to these 18 data checks that we mentioned earlier all the time. So you'll see there's a new ones popping up, and we've got some in progress at the moment. And it allows you to see the state of play. So it shows you which period we're checking. In this case, it's all activity. On the left-hand side here, you can see all transactions, or you can filter by perhaps the financial year, or you can put a custom date range in for a VAT quarter, for example. It shows you how many items there are in the bookkeeping that have been checked. So all of those items, the number of checks, that's 18 data checks, how many potential issues in total Xenon Connect's found there, and the financial value of those potential issues, as well as the health indicator score. So it's given 84%, which you can see on the left-hand side here as well. And that calculation, that 84%, is a function of how old outstanding items are generally. So it's, if there's unexplained items or unreconciled items within the bank account, it's the value and the age of those items, as well as how old unpaid invoices are and the value of those invoices, as well as how old unpaid bills are and the value of those bills. And as you correct things or dismiss things, you will notice that its health score increases back up towards 100%. And the key is to get that health score up to 100% at all times whenever you're carrying out the bookkeeping, whether that be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even annually, depending on the nature of the relationship with your client. So zipping down these health checks now, you can see there's this orange background with an exclamation mark here to suggest there's something we need to do. So if we jump into one of these data checks here, if I jump into old unpaid invoices, so select view issues, you'll notice the sidebar stays here on the left-hand side, so it's a quick way of navigating between the different data check pages as well. Now this is a typical data check page. You'll see at the top there's the title, there's the number of items, there's the total potential errors on the right-hand side here. There's the settings icon. You can go straight to the settings page to tweak the sensitivity of all the data check pages. But you'll notice that at the top of every data check page, we've got this issue, so what, and solution narrative. And the reason for this is it's easy to get bogged down with software and not really understanding why we're doing things and why there's features within the software. So each of these 18 data checks have this narrative here to explain to us, but also perhaps less experienced team members, exactly why this data check page matters, why are we doing it, and how do we fix the items that we found. So in this case, old customer invoices, essentially it's spending less time in that aged debtors report to look at, customers that perhaps need to be chased for payments, or if it's the client, or if it's perhaps you working out whether payments should be allocated against invoices that just aren't there, or we need to write certain things off as bad debts, for example. So going down, you can see there's 9 issues that have been found here. This top issue here has a contact name in Xero of Fortune Supplies Limited. It's got an invoice date of 4th of October this year. So that's 63 days old. So it's showing in this list of issues because it's older than 60 days. Now, as I say, you can change the sensitivity of how many days old is the threshold to show up here. It gives the invoice reference. It gives a bit of details pulled in from that invoice from Xero. It gives the total value of the invoice. And it allows you to deep link into Xero. So if I click the view button now, I'm already logged into my Xero account, my advisor account. It will take me straight to that particular sales invoice within Xero to investigate further if I need to. But because it's unpaid, I can also void it in Xero directly from Xenon Connect. So if it should never have been created and it hasn't been sent to the client, for example, then we could void it in Xero directly here by the click of a button really quickly. We could start to create credit notes within Xero when we click that button. Perhaps if you want to write it off as a bad debt or issue a credit note to the customer. We can dismiss it if we're happy that it will be paid at some point. We can just dismiss it and it won't show up again on this list, this particular item. Or even better in this case would be to ignore it for 30 days. So if we're expecting the customer to pay soon, but we don't want it to show on this list in the meantime, we can just ignore it for now. And it'll only appear again in this list if the customer still hasn't paid within 30 days. You'll notice that a lot of the data checks, we've got this bulk process options here. So at the top, when you tick these items, you can, for example, void items in bulk. You can dismiss them in bulk or ignore them for 30 days. And those options vary depending on which data check page we're on. You can also filter. So for example, if we want to filter just the Amazon items here, you can quickly start typing and it'll automatically filter in there. You can choose how many results show on per page as well. So what I'll do is I'll zip through these data check pages really quickly, just to give you an idea of what the system does. So the unreconciled bank is a high level look at how many items within Xero need to be reconciled. So you can see this information in Xero, obviously, when you log into Xero. However, by putting it in this checklist, it prompts somebody to do something. So whether it's you or one of your team members or even the client themselves, if you choose to invite them into the system as well. If you click the process button for this particular bank account, you'll see it will take you straight to the reconciliation screen for that bank account within Xero. It'll allow you to get to work on explaining things there. Obviously, we want to get this down to 0. So as you explain things and when you resync, it will then reduce this back down to 0. Duplicate invoices looks at the same contact for invoices within Xero. In this case, is Office Furniture Direct is the contact, the customer. We've got 2 invoices here of similar date. We've got different invoice references. We've got different, well, in this case, it's the same details text, but it doesn't have to be. We've got the same or very similar total value for that invoice. And it gives us a bit of a detail about whether the invoice has been paid or not. It allows you to go, again, directly to those invoices within Xero with a deep link. It allows you to void one of the items if it hasn't been paid already. So it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, well, is one of these invoices, has it been created in error? Do we want to void it or credit note it? In which case we could do that within Xero or void it here directly. If it's not, if they are legitimate individual invoices, we can just dismiss the match and that match will never show up again. We've got the same on the supplier side. So for duplicate bills, we've got similar dates here for this particular contact, so bill dates. We've got different bill references. We've got the same details again here, but it doesn't have to be again. We've got the total value the same or very similar, and it lets us know if the bills have been paid or not. Again, it lets us to deep link or void items within Xero. So depending on how you're putting your bills into Xero, so whether it's something like HubDoc, whether your client's entering them or emailing them to Xero itself, or they're uploading manually, or different team members doing different things, it can get clogged up, that duplicate, that bill list within Xero. So this is a great way of finding out if there's been bills there that have been added more than once, and it allows you to review them and avoid them if that is the case, and dismiss match if they are legitimate bills. The old unpaid invoices and old unpaid bills are similar, but on the customer and the supplier side. So if I just look at old unpaid bills, we can see here, there's the contact name, there's the bill date, and it's over 66 days old. Now, we looked at these briefly before on the customer side, but it's the same on the supplier side here. And you can dive straight into Xero or make changes directly here. The unapproved invoices and unapproved bills, I'll look at the bills one. So on the supplier side, it's looking at those draft bills that are sitting there within Xero. Why haven't they approved them? Do we need to approve them, or can we just delete them? Have they been uploaded in error, perhaps via HubDoc or a different method into the system? Can we just delete them in Xero here directly from Xenon Connect if we know that it's a duplicate, for example, or just not needed? We can view them within Xero. We can approve them within Xero directly from Xenon Connect if all the information's there. Otherwise, it won't give you the option to approve. Or we can ignore for 30 days if we think we're going to be approving it soon, but just not yet. Now, the invoicer direct and biller direct are quite unique, and they're quite great ways of time saving. So I'll look at the biller direct. So the invoicer direct is on the customer side, and the biller direct is on the supplier side. So what this data check does, it looks for particular contacts. So in this case, it's Microsoft at the top here. It looks for any unpaid bills, and it looks for any spend items that have been put directly to a nominal account for that same contact around or slightly after the same date of the unpaid bill for the same amount. So if somebody's coded this MS Office 365 subscription straight to, for example, computer software, directly to the code, not going through the supplier ledger, but there's also this unpaid bill, it's also gone through as a bill on the supplier ledger. Well, more often than not, if it shows up here, it means it needs to be unallocated within Xero, the payment, and reallocated against the bill. Because at the moment, there's a risk that this supplier is going to be paid twice. There's also double accounting on the expense itself. So profit is understated as well because this expense is recorded twice. So it prompts the user to view the item on the payment side, perhaps, unallocate it as normal, remove and redo, and reallocate it against that bill. And then obviously that will fix the issue. So it's a great way of saving time looking for these issues, which often occur depending on the level of knowledge and the complexity of the client. Moving on to duplicate contacts. This is a great way of getting rid of those duplicate contacts within Xero. So it may be that you've got different systems connected to Xero. Maybe it's, for example, Stripe, or perhaps a practice management suite, or GoCardless, for example. And if there's a slight spelling in one of those contacts when they pass data into Xero, then as I'm sure you're aware, it will create a duplicate contact within Xero. So in this case, we've got here Commercial Estates Ltd and Commercial Estate Limited. Now, what the data check does is it removes the letters Ltd and Limited from the equation when it's calculating the similarity score, and it compares the text string that's left here. And if it's exactly the same, so in this case, Staples versus Staples, it will give a similarity score of 100%, and it will prompt the user to then look at which one do we want to keep, which one do we want to merge or archive, and then you can go into Xero and merge and archive. It takes you straight to that contact. It allows you to go to options and merge or archive as normal within Xero there. And it also gives you an idea of which one do we want to keep, which one do we want to merge into the one, because it tells you, have any invoices or bills been raised against that particular contact? Has a person's contact details been added, email address, a physical address, or a telephone number? So it gives you an idea of which one is the legitimate contact we want to keep. It allows you to archive or merge the other one. If they are two legitimate contacts, obviously, you can dismiss the match, and that particular match won't show up again within Xenon Connect as an issue. Moving on to contact defaults. So what this data check does is it looks at all the contacts in Xero there, and it looks at whether defaults have been set up for the sales account, the purchases account, the sales tax code and the purchases tax code. And if they haven't, if all of them haven't been set up, it will prompt you to do that there. Now, it can be time consuming to do this. So we've just introduced this little toggle here. And when you activate that, it will show you the most recently used codes for that particular contact. And it'll prompt you. So for example, this one here, Elegant Art Limited, we normally code things on the purchases side to cost of goods sold. So let's click that and it pre-populates that there, and 20% VAT on expenses. And when we click confirm here, I'll just go into that particular contact within Xero so you can see the changes. At the moment, there's no default setup on the right-hand side here. But when I click confirm here, it will prompt me to fill in these other two boxes, but I don't need to in this case because it's just a supplier. I'll click OK. That's processed that change within Xero. So if I refresh the contact in Xero now, you'll see on the right-hand side here, we've got those two, the tax code and the purchases account there that we specified as the default setup. And why that matters is, depending on how you're raising invoices or bills within Xero, it will automatically produce the default for you for when you're filling in those transactions. So you're not perhaps putting in a different code when you're doing that, but also it flows through to the other data checks at the bottom here, these unexpected account and unexpected tax code. So I'll jump straight down to those now. The unexpected account, what this data check does, it looks at each contact and every single bill or money in or invoice or money out item for each individual contact. And it looks at the account that's been used for every single transaction for that contact within Xero, and it compares it to those defaults set up for that contact that we just looked at on that previous page. And if they differ, the actual account for transaction differs from the default account, then it will flag it up here and say, well, actually, you said that normally you want to use this cost of goods sold nominal account for this wholesale things limited. However, in this case, you've used direct expenses. Are you being consistent? And if we click Save Changes here, it will update that bill, that account code for that bill within Xero directly. A click of a button, or you can specify a different code if you want to as well. And it will update it within Xero, and it will remove it from the list here. So it's a really quick way of making sure we're consistent with those codings. And we've got the same on the tax code side. So it compares the default tax code for every single contact with the tax code used for every single transaction for those contacts. So in this case, again, we've got wholesale things limited. There's a bill here. The tax code they've used on this is Xero rated expenses. And maybe it's the client that's put this in that doesn't know what they're doing. But in this case, the supplier is taxable. So we've got 20% VAT on expenses set as the default here. If we click Save Changes, it will update that tax code for that transaction. So it's a great way when you're doing those VAT return reviews at the end of the quarter to make sure we're being consistent on a contact by contact basis with our codings of VAT codes. Again, if you've got something like Amazon, whereby you might have different tax codes, you might have different account codes used, and what you can do is ignore the contact so that this data check doesn't consider items from that particular contact. That can be a great way of making sure you've not inundated with items here that you know will be different every time pretty much. But we understand that not every practice does set these contact defaults up here because it's time consuming. However, we do obviously speed things up here, and we can do things in bulk as well. For example, we could set all these items as the usual sales account here. We could set them, and that will change it in Xero when we select the code here. Or we can do the same with the tax codes and the purchase accounts, for example. We can dismiss things in bulk. And soon we're going to make it so that you can turn off data check page as well if you're not interested in this particular data check page. However, we understand that not everybody would want to use this because it is so time consuming potentially, although it is best practice. So what we've introduced is these other two data checks here, which run alongside or instead of those unexpected accounts and unexpected tax codes data checks we just looked at. So the multi-account suppliers doesn't consider the default account code that's been set up for a particular contact. In this case, we've got the contact Microsoft. What it does is it looks at every single transaction for Microsoft, for example, and it looks at the account codes used for those transactions. And if more than one account code has been used in the set period that we've selected up here, and 3 months prior to that period by default, although you can change that sensitivity, If there's different transactions, it will flag it up here as an issue. It will say, okay, in this case, looks like we normally put things to IT software and consumables for Microsoft. However, in this case, someone's put it to subscriptions. So do we want to change that? Now we can view and edit the transaction within Xero by clicking the button there to take you straight to that item, that money out item there. Or we can mark all the items as okay if we're happy with them. Or we can do that in bulk here, mark all items as okay. And again, we can ignore the contact if we know there's going to be different items for different account codes for the same supplier here as well. So this doesn't it doesn't consider those defaults set up, especially important if you haven't set the defaults up for contacts within Xero. It just looks at what we've done historically for this particular contact with the actual transactions. And if it deviates from the norm, it will flag it up here. We do the same for the multi-tax suppliers. So that when you plug this straight into Xero, Xenon Connect, it will pull up this here, and it will allow you to go back for however long you want to and look at those past VAT returns or the current VAT return. And it'll look at whether the VAT code is being consistently applied for transactions for a particular contact or not. And if it's not, it will flag it up here and it'll allow you to do something about it. We've also got a few more data checks. It's just 3 more here. There's inactive contacts. Now this really reduces the clutter within your contact list. So it looks at every single contact that you've got within the Xero account. And it looks at when the most recent transaction for that particular contact is. In this case, we've got BP Garage. 947 days ago was the last transaction for this particular contact. Do we want to just archive it now? So we can archive it in Xero directly from Xenon Connect here. We don't even have to go into Xero to do that. Maybe it's just like a garage that we used in the top of Scotland and we're down in London or something, and we probably won't use that again. Then we can just archive it here, and it just reduces that clutter when we're trying to reconcile items from the bank to particular contacts. Then it will reduce the number of contacts that we're sifting through. The low-cost assets. Now, over the years, in my time in bookkeeping and accounting, there's been lots of situations whereby you have to review the nominal account codes to make sure that, we're looking at whether there's, in this case, it is looking at the fixed asset codes. And are there any small value items that have gone to fixed asset codes, which would be perhaps better off written off to the profit and loss account? In this case, there's a tabletop lamp for office desk here. £71 in value, total value. It's been put to a fixed asset code, office equipment. Do we want to write this off to profit and loss, or are we going to actually include it on a fixed asset register and perhaps depreciate it over 5 years, for example? It prompts the user or yourself to actually change this. And if you do change the code to a profit and loss code here to perhaps something like, I don't know, in this case, it might be printing stationery or might be repairs or something. When you click Save Changes here, it will update that account code for that bill within Xero automatically, and it will remove it from the list here. Or we can obviously dismiss it. Now, by default, the threshold is £200. So anything less than £200 will show up here that's been posted to a fixed asset code. But you can change that within settings. And I'll look at settings now just to give you an idea of what you can change. So these are all the data check settings that you can change. So this is the data check we're just looking at, low cost assets. You can set the threshold here for those fixed asset codes. You'll notice on the next data check, you can set a threshold for each individual nominal of the profit and loss code and add different profit and loss codes as well to monitor. So if we jump to that one, capital item review, this is the reverse of what we just looked at. It looks at those dumping grounds in the profit and loss. So maybe it's repairs and maintenance, printing stationery, or any other code you want to add. It adds those two by default. It looks at all transactions that have been posted to those nominal accounts in a specified period. And it prompts the user to perhaps change them to a fixed asset code. If that is the case, if we want to change that to perhaps office equipment, because it's £400, maybe it's not of a repairs nature, not a revenue nature, it's more of a capital nature. So you want to actually include it on the fixed asset register. So you can change that here within Xero directly. Again, as we just looked at, you can change the threshold for each individual nominal code that's been monitored within Xero, depending on perhaps the size of the client and your own practices, way of doing things, what you set as that threshold for capitalizing items. So they're all the 18 data check pages. And you'll see, again, if we go back to the client panorama, you'll see that the overall data check score that we just looked at, 84% there, shows up the number of items in total show here. So you've got that panoramic view of all your clients. if I just jump back into that particular contact, the next section, and we'll look at this more briefly than what we've just gone through, because that's the main system is what we've just looked at here, which is the Xenon Exact, which is the data cleansing, the data check of all that bookkeeping. Xenon Insights, once you've cleansed all the data and you've got more accurate bookkeeping data, this provides 9 boxes, which will be useful for you, but potentially also for your clients if you choose to invite your client into Xenon Connect. You don't have to, and most advisors probably don't invite the clients, and they just use it as a bookkeeping cleansing tool. However, depending on how you work with your clients or how you do things within your own team, these 9 boxes here are some of the 9 questions that I know from my own experience I get asked as an accountant by the clients. What is this data? How can we help them with this data easily? The first item is the sales tracker. It allows them to set targets for their monthly sales figures. Now, those targets can be pulled in directly from Xero, and you can change that in settings, or they can be pulled in from perhaps automatically calculated on the previous 3-month average. So it looks at the previous 3 months actual sales figures, and it perhaps adds 5% or whatever you want to add on top of that. And it produces this target graph here. And it lets them know where they're up to for the current month compared to the target figure. So it's a bit of a motivational, can you get the sales figure up there before the time finishes for the end of the month, that sort of thing. Probably more useful for the client, but it can be useful to look at how the client is increasing in terms of the level of complexity and the amount of value we're providing for them by increased workload if their sales are increasing. The cash health check looks at, it's a worst case scenario situation, an early warning system, looking at what is the actual cash balance within Xero once all that bookkeeping is up to date, and what's the outgoings that are expected based on the trial balance, those liability accounts. It gives more weight to short-term outgoings and less weight to the medium term, and even less weight to the long term, things like loans. And it looks at how well placed the business is to actually meet all those outgoings. In this case, the current cash balance won't even include their short-term suppliers balance. So the health score is really quite low, it's 41%. However, if that cash increased to, for example, £150,000, which is more than the total expected outgoings, then it would obviously be 100% here in terms of the health score for the actual cash health check. You can change settings, you can override values here, you can set hard code values into, for example, for net wages if you don't normally post a wages journal, that sort of thing. There's lots of scope for tweaking this. However, it does come ready out of the box. All these settings that you've seen here that I'm showing this demo account, when you connect that Xero account, it will just work. You might want to tweak it to individual clients. However, we use settings that generally work for all clients. The bookkeeping health check widget on the right hand side here just prompts the user or you to go into that bookkeeping Xenon Insight check that we looked at. The profitability graph here looks at a high level sales income versus gross profit versus net profit figure on a monthly basis for the recent months. And it'll help us as accountants and bookkeepers to look at, are there any anomalies with the bookkeeping? Has something been coded incorrectly? If something really sticks out, or perhaps does something need prepaying, that sort of thing. Corporation tax estimate doesn't just apply 19% to the net profit showing in Xero for a particular year, financial year. It also allows you to add back items such as depreciation, entertainment, and it adds those as default based on the chart of accounts, but you can also tweak that within settings, which account codes you want to add back. And it prompts you to apply a capital allowance setting to each individual fixed asset cost code as well. And you'll see that when you go into settings. And it'll give you an estimate of 19% based on all those add backs and adjustments. You can also put in, for example, R&D tax credits. You can put a manual adjustment for that sort of thing as well if you want to. So it's reducing those, well, why didn't you tell me about that conversation with the client? So if they perhaps give us our records late, and then we slap them with a large corporation tax bill, which isn't our fault because they've given us the records late, they still expect us to know what's going on with our business. So if we can provide this to our team members, so it gives them an idea of a corporation tax, which could creep up, especially as the firm's growing, the business is growing, then it can allow us to have that conversation early with the clients about the corporation tax bill that's coming up, without having to do some complicated up-to-date management accounts and actual corporation tax calculations separately. It produces it automatically here. The director's loan account, it's the same sort of thing. It's an early warning system, and it reduces those, well, why didn't you tell me about this conversation? Why didn't you tell me my director's loan account was overdrawn, and now I've got a section 455 bill. I've got this beneficial loan interest on the overdrawn director's loan account. So it just lets them know at high level, is my director's loan account, or are multiple director's loan accounts overdrawn, or are they in credit? Are they okay? And it'll put a tick if they're okay, if they're in credit, and it'll have an exclamation mark and a red icon if they're actually overdrawn. And it prompts you to have a conversation with the client about that, to look at what's going on. Do they need to repay some money into the company, or is it just that the bookkeeping is not up to date at this stage? But it also can help your clients, if you do grant them access as well, to understand that they can't keep going overdrawn unless they're happy with that additional section 455 bill, for example. You can tweak in settings which actual codes apply for director's loan accounts within the Xero chart of accounts as well here, but it does apply the default director's loan account straight away out of the box. The business valuation looks at a valuation that applies it in real time based on the average annual profit or a multiple of that profit, whether it's the last 24 months, for example, last year, or perhaps based on sales value, or perhaps based on net assets. You've got 3 different options there. You can also apply multiples for those values. It doesn't set a valuation model as default. It would be you or the client that would set this if you want to get involved in that. Maybe it's you want to start up the conversation regarding exit planning. So it's very high level to start that conversation off with the client. The working capital cycle gives a graphical representation of how quickly cash flow through the system. So based on spending items, if they've got stock, it will look at the stock days as well. And also the debtor days, how long customers are taking to pay us. Obviously, the lesser the value here in terms of the number of days for the working capital cycle, the better. But it allows us to perhaps have conversations. Do we want to incorporate Stripe or Go Cardless for the clients to help them reduce those debtor days, for example, to reduce the overall working capital cycle number of days there. And the dividend availability is the final box here. It looks at the current level of profit reserves for the business per the balance sheet. So if all that bookkeeping is up to date, it will give you that value there for the reserves. It'll allow you to incorporate those estimates of corporation tax that we've applied here in the middle, that's automatically calculated, or you can override those as well with a particular value, or ignore it if you've already journaled it into Xero. And then it will give you the maximum dividend available. It will show you how much you can take out, or the shareholders of that business can take out as a maximum. And if it's a negative value for reserves here, or a 0 value, it will show an exclamation mark saying no dividend available, to avoid those illegal dividends there as well. So again, it's those early warning systems and reducing those, why didn't you tell me about this conversation with the client as well. So this is what we have. This is the system as it is. As I say, we're increasing all the time. We're introducing QuickBooks by the end of this month, with Sage and Free Agent next year. We're introducing data checks every month as well, pretty much. So we've got 18 currently that we showed you in Xenon Exact there, but these are increasing all the time. If you want to send this to your clients, this report, you can download it here with this icon, and it will give you a PDF that you can perhaps email to the client. And this really helps to show them the value of what we're doing for them, perhaps as bookkeeping or accountants, letting them know the state of play, perhaps before we do any work, regarding the health of their bookkeeping, and let them know what we do behind the scenes isn't just ticking a few boxes and doing things. It's not a big black box behind the scenes that they're not aware of anymore. We can send them details about exactly the value we're providing to them. We can show them what value the errors currently are, and the number of issues there, and a breakdown of those issues at a high level to show exactly the value we're providing. So when we're comparing those values of those issues that we're fixing compared to the fee that we're charging to them, often it dwarfs the fee that we're providing to them, and it really shows that value of what we're providing as accountants and bookkeepers. So if I go back out now to the slides, I go back here, just minimize this. We'll look at the pricing of Xenon Connect. So we're really transparent with the pricing. And now if you just want to add one client, because you're perhaps an internal bookkeeper, you can do so for £9 plus VAT per month. However, if you're an accountancy or bookkeeping firm, then Our starter package starts at 5 Xero organizations, so you can add 5 organizations, and that will soon be 5 Xero or QuickBooks organizations, so you can mix and match, and then it'll be free agent and Sage next year as well. But currently it's 5 Xero organizations for £20 per month. So it's £4 plus VAT. It'll allow you to have 10 team members, and it will give you access to everything that you've seen here today. There's nothing that's hidden behind a different paywall. Everything's included. The bronze package reduces the unit cost to £3.50 plus VAT. So for 10 Xero organizations, it's £35 plus VAT per month. Again, that gives you 10 team members. Silver package is 25 Xero organizations for £75 per month, so £3 per client. Again, 10 team members. Now, gold gives you unlimited team members and 50 organizations for £125 per month. So it reduces it even further. What's that? £2.50, isn't it, per client? And then platinum is our lowest unit cost, which is £2 per client. So for 100 organizations, it's £200 per month. And if you want more than 100 clients, which many of our advisors do, then we're very transparent. You'll see on the website, it's £2 per additional client. On top of that, you can add bolt-ons in 10 client packages on top of the 100 clients here. So we're really transparent, and we're really favorable in terms of cost to any competitors that you might find out there. But we're also currently offering this no risk offer to bookkeeping and accountancy practices, so big and small. You can get set up completely free of charge with this free partner account, so you can log in and start adding one Xero organization completely free of charge. Now, that may be your own practice's Xero organization, or it may be one juicy client that you want to run through Xenon Connect, see how it deals with it. You can add that, and it's not a 14-day trial in that case for accountancy and bookkeeping practices. It's unlimited, so it runs for the life of that business. So it will stay there forever. Also, I'll provide a link to you via email after the webinar to a one-on-one onboarding session with me. So once you've had a quick look around, if you want to have that session with me, you can book in a link via Calendly, and we'll have a Zoom call, and we'll discuss any questions that you've got and run through the system and any questions that you want answered. Now, to get set up with that completely free partner account with one Xero organization added, you don't need to add your payment card details at all. There's no risk at all. And if you do decide to upgrade to one of those packages we just looked at on top of the one free organization, then it's a rolling monthly contract. There's no long tie-in at all. You pay on a month-by-month basis unless you want to pay annually for a discount. But most importantly, I feel, is you'll have the opportunity to shape the future roadmap of Xenon Connect. So everything that we've been introducing within Xenon Connect, I've personally spoken to over 150 accountants and bookkeepers in practice in the UK. And many of those have given us great feedback in terms of what they want to see within Xenon Connect. And we discuss any feedback we get every week, at least twice a week within our meetings we have here. And that really shapes the way that we build Xenon Connect going forward. So what you want to see within the Xenon Connect system itself. There's a link there. You'll see xenonconnect.com/partner-program. You can access it by the website, xenonconnect.com anyway. There's an accountants and bookkeepers link you'll see at the top there. Thank you very much for taking the time. As I say, there's the link again. I will pop everybody an email after the webinar. This is a few more details and a few of these links and my contact details, so you can get in touch with me if you want to get started. I hope you found it useful, and I hope that we can get in touch soon and Xenon Connect can be part of the way that you do things within your own practice. Thanks very much for watching. That's great. Bye now.